Every outboard has a story. Some built reputations that lasted generations. Quiet, smooth, reliable power that always brought you home. And then, there were these. Engines so frustrating, unreliable, or downright dangerous that they made boaters swear off entire brands. From melting pistons to exploding gearcases, these are the 15 worst outboard engines of all time, ranked from bad to absolute disaster. Let's start with the ones that merely disappointed, and work our way to the engines that nearly sank their makers. 15. Yamaha 3-cylinder 70 HP, early 1980s. Yamaha rarely gets it wrong, but in the early 1980s, even the most trusted name in boating stumbled hard. Their first-generation 70 HP 3-cylinder looked perfect on paper, light, smooth, and surprisingly quick for its size. At first, it earned praise for that classic Yamaha refinement: whisper quiet at idle, eager at wide-open throttle. But by the second season, things went downhill fast. Owners noticed bogging, fouled plugs, and one cylinder mysteriously losing compression. The culprit? A flawed oiling and cooling balance that caused piston scoring and crank seal leaks, slowly choking the engine from within. Carburetors flooded, fuel economy tanked, and what was once Yamaha's middleweight masterpiece became a warranty nightmare. They quietly redesigned it, but not before this motor left a scar on an otherwise spotless reputation. 14. Tohatsu 70 HP, mid-1990s. Tohatsu was synonymous with simplicity and reliability, a brand you could trust on a small fishing boat. But the mid-1990s 70 HP two-stroke was a rare misfire in an otherwise flawless lineup. On paper, it seemed fine, compact, lightweight, and inexpensive. In practice, it was fragile. The undersized crank bearings wore out quickly under normal use, and the water pump impeller often failed after just a few hundred hours. Overheating was common and gear cases leaked more than they held together. Fishermen swore by Tohatsu's other models, but this one quickly earned a reputation as a disposable workhorse. Few survived beyond 400 hours of heavy use. It was a solid concept that never survived reality. 13. Honda BF90, 1998 to 2004. Honda built its reputation on precision and reliability, but the early BF90 four-stroke was a rare misstep. This engine promised fuel efficiency, quiet operation, and smooth power, and it delivered, until it didn't. The timing belt tensioner was prone to early failure, which could wreck pistons and cause catastrophic engine damage. The triple carb setup was notoriously difficult to synchronize, leaving owners constantly fiddling at the dock. Even a minor carb imbalance could cause misfires, fouled plugs, and inconsistent throttle response. Boaters initially praised its quiet operation, but many quickly discovered that reliability came at a cost. Endless adjustments and expensive repairs. Honda corrected the issues in later versions, but the BF90 remains a cautionary tale about trusting a new generation too early. 12. Mercury 3.3 HP two-stroke, early 2000s. Small engines should be simple, dependable, and start on the first pull. Mercury's 3.3 HP two-stroke did none of those things consistently. Marketed as the ultimate portable kicker, it was lightweight and compact, ideal for a small dinghy or tender. But the tiny carburetor jets clogged after just a few days of sitting, and with no fuel filter, the engine would often refuse to start. Once warm, it became a stubborn, smoky puzzle, forcing frustrated boaters to push it back to shore more than once. Its choke system was finicky, and vibration made operation unpleasant. Mercury eventually replaced it with a more reliable four-stroke, but for thousands of owners, the 3.3 HP earned a reputation as the motor that makes rowing look good. 11. Chrysler 55 HP, 1960s to the 1970s. Before force outboards, Chrysler tried its hand at marine engines, and the 55 HP model became a cautionary tale. Heavy, underpowered, and plagued with fragile electrical components, it often disappointed from day one. The points ignition system corroded rapidly. Starters failed mid-season, and overheating was common due to an underperforming water pump. Even new, it struggled to plane boats efficiently, leaving owners frustrated and dealers reluctant to service them. Chrysler's lack of spare parts compounded the problem, turning simple maintenance into a scavenger hunt. While it promised 55 horsepower, it delivered little more than headaches. A stark reminder that not every single engine badge guarantees performance. 10. Suzuki DT140, mid-1980s. Suzuki entered the outboard world determined to compete with the big three, Mercury, Johnson, and Yamaha, and the DT140 was supposed to announce their arrival. On paper, it looked perfect, lightweight, fast, and brimming with modern engineering. But beneath the polished exterior lurked a serious flaw. The oil injection system was fragile and prone to failure. When it malfunctioned, pistons seized instantly, destroying the engine. Compounding the problem, the lean factory tune made the motor prone to detonation and overheating. Plugs fouled, pistons melted, and early adopters quickly learned that Suzuki's first high-power two-stroke was more nightmare than breakthrough, leaving a long shadow over their marine reputation. 9. Johnson V6 150 GT, late 1980s. The Johnson GT150 promised speed and excitement, a high-compression V6 designed for thrill-seeking boaters. OMC marketed it as a hot rod on water, capable of thrilling acceleration and wide-open power. But beneath the sleek cowling, disaster waited. The engine demanded premium fuel and precise tuning. Most owners ignored the warning. Result? Severe detonation, blown head gaskets, and shattered pistons became common. A motor that sounded ferocious at idle often didn't survive a single racing season. Its fleeting performance and catastrophic failures earned it the nickname the one-season wonder, a cautionary tale for anyone chasing horsepower without respect for engineering limits. 8. Force 120, 1970s to 1990s. The Force 120 was supposed to be Chrysler's claim to marine credibility. Later absorbed into Mercury's lineup, at first glance it seemed capable. 120 horsepower, compact, and promising smooth operation. But in reality, the Force 120 was a nightmare in disguise. Outdated carburetors, weak electrical systems, and shoddy castings made it unreliable from the start. It shook violently at idle, burned fuel like a V8, and often delivered less power than competitors rated much lower. Mercury tried cosmetic fixes, but underneath, it was still the same flawed design. For many, it wasn't an engine. It was a floating anchor that could ruin a weekend. 7. Mercury 4-cylinder 50 HP, Tower of Power Jr., 1970s. Mercury's legendary 6-cylinder Tower of Power was beloved, but the 4-cylinder Jr. was anything but. They tried to shrink the design, but the result was a motor plagued with vibration, misfires, and weak low-end torque. Owners reported cylinders randomly dropping offline, ignition problems, and an engine that refused to plane boats efficiently. Fuel economy was poor, and its narrow power band made acceleration jerky and frustrating. Mechanics jokingly referred to it as the 2.5-cylinder special. Mercury retired quietly, but not before it frustrated weekend boaters and tarnished the reputation of what should have been a reliable, smaller version of a classic powerhouse. 6. McCulloch 75 HP, 1960s. The McCulloch 75 HP was ambitious, a company known for chainsaws trying to conquer the marine world. But ambition couldn't overcome poor metallurgy and design flaws. Crankshafts were weak and could literally snap under load. Vibration loosened ignition components, leading to detonation and backfires. Dealers often refused to service them, and parts were scarce even when new. Boaters who tried them quickly learned to fear the 75 HP's reputation. a flashy, heavy engine with catastrophic potential. It became a cautionary tale of what happens when a successful land-based company attempts marine engineering without experience. Within a few years, McCulloch shut down its outboard division entirely. 5. Mercury Optimax 225, early 2000s. Mercury's Optimax 225 was ambitious, promising fuel efficiency, power, and compliance with strict emission standards. But early models were plagued by failures. Air injectors leaked, compressors blew apart, and reed valves fractured unexpectedly. Some engines ran flawlessly, while others refused to start at all. Warranty claims overwhelmed dealers, forcing expensive repairs and retraining technicians on the fly. While later Optimaxes became reliable, the early 225 left scars on Mercury's reputation. For boaters, it was a roll of the dice, a powerful motor that could perform brilliantly one day and strand you the next. It was innovation at a heavy cost. 4. OMC V4 Crossflow, late 1970s to the 1980s. OMC's V4 Crossflow was a relic from the 1960s, a design that had long passed its prime by the late 1970s. It guzzled fuel, ran hot, and built carbon deposits faster than most boaters could service it. Overheating led to detonation, warped heads, and poor idle stability. Pushing it hard on the water often resulted in catastrophic engine wear. While OMC eventually replaced it with more modern loop-charged designs, the Crossflow left an indelible mark on the brand's reputation. Boaters learned quickly. Handling the Crossflow meant constant vigilance or a visit to the mechanic, and sometimes both, on the water. 3. Evinrude E-Tech G2 300 HP, 2015 to 2020. The E-Tech G2 300 was technologically impressive, digitally controlled, clean, and powerful. But brilliance came with a price. A single sensor failure could trigger limp mode. Software updates were frequent, and mechanics without specialized tools couldn't service it properly. The high-torque gear case was fragile, prone to failure under aggressive loads. BRP's eventual shutdown of Evinrude in 2020 was partially due to complexity of this engine, which proved too expensive and finicky to maintain. While it was a marvel on paper, for boaters relying on raw dependability, the G2 300 could feel like a ticking time bomb. Beautiful, but unpredictable. 2. Scott Atwater, 7.5 HP, 1950s. The Scott Atwater 7.5 HP deserves the top spot on this list. A motor that turned boating dreams into frustration almost instantly. Lightweight and cheap, it appealed to post-war buyers, but the engineering was shoddy. Coils failed constantly, fuel lines cracked, and impellers dissolved in months. The recoil starter was notorious for snapping back, injuring fingers and hands. Even casual maintenance couldn't save it. It was temperamental, underpowered, and unreliable. Dealers stopped selling them, and owners abandoned them in favor of Johnson's or Evinrude's. For many, this tiny engine wasn't just bad, it was a lesson in how not to build an outboard. 1. Evinrude Ficht, 1997 to 2000. If there's a motor that truly deserves the title Nightmare on the Water, it's the Evinrude Ficht 175. Marketed as revolutionary, clean, and powerful, it instead became infamous for destroying itself in days. Pistons melted, fuel injectors leaked, and engines occasionally caught fire while running. Warranty claims skyrocketed, leaving owners stranded mid-lake, some watching smoke billow from brand new motors they just bought. OMC, desperate to keep up with repairs, went bankrupt by 2000, and dealers refused to touch them. For boaters, the Ficht wasn't just unreliable, it was dangerous, expensive, and terrifying. A cutting-edge innovation turned nightmare. It serves as a chilling reminder. Even the most advanced engine can become a total disaster if engineering fails catastrophically. Looking back, most of these engines failed for one of three reasons. 1. Rushed innovation. When regulations or market pressure hit, companies gambled on unproven tech, and the customers paid the price. 2. Corporate chaos. Chrysler, OMC, Mulloch all were in financial trouble when these engines were built. And when money's tight, reliability always goes first. 3. Complexity over common sense. Modern outboards, like the E-Tech G2, were impressive, but overcomplicated. Boaters don't want software patches. They want engines that just work. Boating teaches you to trust the water and the machine behind you. And if there's one lesson from these 15 disasters, it's this. The sea doesn't care about marketing, only about what actually starts and what actually brings you home. So next time you're tempted by a great deal on an old outboard, remember, every bargain motor has a backstory, and some of them earn their price tag for a reason. Which of these engines have you seen or suffered through in real life? Drop your story in the comments. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden history of boating's best and worst machines, make sure to subscribe, because there are more stories waiting beneath the waves.